A shocking revelation as Fulani man exposes those holding Nnamdi Kanu in DSS detention. The Fulani man claims that Nnamdi Kanu is being held not by the federal government alone, but by his own people who do not want him released. Despite a court order for his release, certain individuals allegedly influenced the DSS to continue holding Nnamdi Kanu. He discusses the historical existence of Biafra and the differing views on its revival, with some advocating for restructuring instead. He criticized the Nigerian government for mismanaging the IPOB issue, including using the military for internal affairs rather than the police. The choice of the military operations name, Python Dance, is condemned for instilling fear among the people, contrasting with softer names used in the north. The military's branding of IPOB as a terrorist group is deemed baseless, with claims that their alleged weapons, stones, sticks, do not meet the definition of terrorism. He touches on the dangers of labeling, suggesting that the government has overreacted to social media rhetoric. Historical references are made to the Biafran struggle, emphasizing that the people remain resilient despite suffering. The impact of economic difficulties on the Biafran people is discussed, highlighting their strong sense of community and self-reliance. I want to share with you a story that caught my attention recently. A story that is as surprising as it is thought-provoking. It all began when a man from the Fulani community, with a voice full of conviction and raw emotion, stepped forward to reveal a secret that many of us might not have expected. He claimed that the well-known Nigerian political activist Nnamdi Kanu, who has long been a symbol of resistance and hope for many people, was not being held in detention solely by the federal government. Instead, according to this Fulani man, Nnamdi Kanu was being kept away by members of his own community, people who did not wish to see him freed, even though a court had already ordered his release. As I listened to his words, I couldn't help but feel like I was sitting down with a close friend who was about to share a personal, unfiltered truth. The man's tone was direct and unembellished, and his language was simple yet charged with meaning. He explained that behind the scenes there were influential individuals whose power reached deep into the workings of the Department of State Services. These people, he suggested, were the ones secretly pulling the strings to keep Nnamdi Kanu confined, ensuring that his release would not happen quickly or easily. This revelation was shocking, not only because of its content, but also because it exposed a tangled web of loyalties and betrayals that many of us had never suspected. I remember thinking about the irony of the situation. Here was a man, Nnamdi Kanu, who had become a symbol of defiance against an establishment that many felt was oppressive, yet his freedom was being hindered by those he was supposed to represent. The man from the Fulani community was not merely pointing fingers at the government. He was highlighting a deeper, more painful truth, that sometimes the very people who share your history and dreams can become obstacles on the road to progress. During this news report, the speaker also took a moment to talk about the past, reminding everyone of the historical existence of Biafra. He recalled that there was once a territory known as Biafra, a land that held a special place in the hearts of many Nigerians, especially those who had experienced hardship and loss during the conflict. Yet, as he spoke, it was clear that opinions were divided. Some people still clung to the dream of reviving Biafra, while others believed that what was needed was not a return to the past, but a restructuring of the system, a way to reform society based on fairness, good governance, and justice for all. The Fulani man's reflections on history were interwoven with his criticism of the Nigerian government. He expressed his frustration over the way the government was handling the ongoing challenges with the indigenous people of Biafra organization, often abbreviated as IPOB. In his view, the government had completely lost its way by allowing the military to take charge of what he considered to be internal issues that should have been handled by the police. He argued that this mismanagement was not only a failure of strategy, but also a betrayal of the people's trust. It was as if the government had chosen a path that further divided its citizens, instead of one that would bring them together in search of common solutions. One of the most memorable parts of the conversation was when the Fulani man took aim at the military's decision to name its operation Python Dance. He explained that the choice of such a name was not just unfortunate, it was dangerous. The name Python Dance evoked images of a large, menacing snake capable of swallowing its prey whole, and it sent a clear message of intimidation. In contrast, he mentioned that in other regions of Nigeria, particularly in the north, the names chosen for similar operations were much softer, more in tune with the need to protect and reassure the people. To him, naming a military operation in such a fearsome way only worsened the atmosphere of mistrust and terror among the citizens. As he continued, the Fulani man went on to question the very basis on which the military had branded IPOB as a terrorist organization. In his simple yet compelling language, he argued that the so-called weapons used by IPOB members, items like stones, sticks, and broken bottles, did not fit the conventional definition of terrorism. Instead of being a force that truly threatened national security, these items were more symbolic of a people's struggle and protest against injustice. He reminded everyone that terrorism is a word that should not be thrown around lightly, for it carries with it consequences that affect not only the accused, but also the entire community. The overuse of such a label, he warned, could stoke further divisions and misunderstandings at a time when the nation needed unity more than ever. Listening to the Fulani man, I felt a growing sense of empathy for those caught in this complicated situation. He wasn't just airing grievances or launching accusations. He was trying to paint a picture of a community in crisis, a community where the bonds of kinship and shared history were being tested by both internal strife and external pressures. He recalled the struggles of the Biafran people, not just as a chapter in history, but as a living memory that still shaped the present. In his words, the Biafran struggle was not merely about a lost territory, it was about a people's unyielding desire for justice, dignity, and the chance to live as they chose. The discussion took a thoughtful turn when the conversation shifted to the challenges faced by ordinary people in Biafra. The speaker, whose voice resonated with both sorrow and hope, described how the economic difficulties in the region had affected everyone, from shopkeepers to laborers. He recalled scenes of markets where shops remained open not because business was booming, but because they needed to maintain the appearance of normalcy. Even though prices had soared and many could no longer afford the goods on offer, the shops persisted, much like the people who kept going despite the hardships. This image of resilience struck a chord with me. It reminded me of the deep-seated human spirit that endures even when faced with overwhelming odds. One particular story that stood out to me during this narrative was that of a lawyer who had become a refugee in the midst of the Biafran conflict. This lawyer had not only experienced the bitter taste of displacement, but had also taken on the responsibility of caring for his fellow countrymen. He had founded a community center that served as a safe haven for those fleeing violence and persecution. In this place, people who had lost everything could find a glimmer of hope, a sense of belonging, and the reassurance that they were not alone. His story was a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are individuals who rise above their own suffering to help others. It is this spirit of solidarity and selflessness that forms the backbone of any community that truly cares for its members. Throughout the report, the tone was unmistakably personal and heartfelt. The speaker, who introduced himself on the video as part of the Linda TV show, took great care to address his audience as "my lovely people," a term that immediately made me feel like I was part of a larger, caring family. He urged everyone watching to stay informed, to share their thoughts, and to remember that the news was not just about politics or conflict. It was about our lives, our history, and the future we all hope to build. His message was clear. The problems we face are not solely the fault of the federal government, but also of those among us who, in their quest for power or personal gain, are willing to sacrifice the greater good. It was during one segment of the report that the speaker's criticism of the government became particularly sharp. He explained that many people had been misled into believing that the federal government was solely responsible for keeping Nnamdi Kanu in detention. However, in a twist that few expected, he revealed that it was actually some members of Nnamdi Kanu's own community who were determined to keep him from being released. According to him, these individuals had such a strong influence over the Department of State Services that they could override even a court order. The idea that one's own kin could turn against him in such a decisive way was both disturbing and heartbreaking. It forced me to consider how deeply internal divisions can affect a nation, and how sometimes the most dangerous threats come not from external forces, but from within. The speaker's discussion also touched on the issue of dialogue, a topic that has been much debated in recent times. Many people in Nigeria have called for the government to engage in a conversation with the indigenous people of Biafra organization in order to find a peaceful solution to the ongoing tensions. However, the speaker was skeptical about this idea. He argued that it was almost laughable to think that a dialogue could be meaningful when the government had already mishandled the situation in so many fundamental ways. In his view, by allowing the military to dominate internal security matters and by branding a group as terrorist based on flimsy evidence, the government had already lost the moral high ground. He suggested that before any meaningful dialogue could take place, the government needed to fix its mistakes and address the root causes of the conflict. I found myself drawn into his argument as he talked about the missteps of the military. One of the most striking examples he gave was the operation named Python Dance. He explained, in a way that was both simple and vivid, that this name was far too intimidating for an operation meant to protect the people. The imagery of a giant python lurking in the shadows and ready to strike was something that could easily frighten ordinary citizens. In regions of the country where people already felt unsafe or oppressed, such a name only added to their anxiety and mistrust. He compared this with operations in other parts of Nigeria, where names were chosen to inspire calm and unity rather than fear and division. His point was clear. When those in power choose names and tactics that alienate the very people they are meant to protect, it only deepens the wounds of a nation already in turmoil. Another issue that the speaker addressed was the use of language and labels. He was particularly critical of the government's decision to label the indigenous people of Biafra organization as a terrorist group. He argued that such a label was not only unfair but also dangerous. By branding the organization as terrorist, the government was setting a precedent that could have far-reaching consequences. It was a label that carried with it a heavy burden of suspicion and hostility, one that could be used to justify harsh measures against anyone who dared to question the official narrative. In his simple yet powerful words, he reminded us that words matter. The labels we choose to use can either bring us together or drive us further apart. And in a time when the nation needed unity more than ever, such divisive language was, in his view, the last thing we needed. As the conversation unfolded, the speaker also took a moment to reflect on the broader implications of these issues for the future of Nigeria. He spoke of the need for all citizens to work together, to hold those in power accountable, and to demand a government that truly served the interests of its people. His tone was one of quiet determination, a call to action for anyone who believed in justice and fairness. He reminded us that the struggle for a better future was not just the responsibility of a few leaders or activists, but of every single person who had a stake in the nation's destiny. It was a message of hope, wrapped in a call for personal responsibility and collective action. I must admit that as I listened to this report, I felt a mix of emotions. There was anger at the injustice of it all, sadness at the division within a community that should be united, and yet, amidst all of this, a glimmer of hope that perhaps, one day, things could change. The idea that people could come together to challenge those who sought to divide them was both inspiring and comforting. It reminded me that even in the midst of political and social chaos, the human spirit is resilient and capable of great things. The speaker also touched on the personal impact of these conflicts on everyday life. He described scenes from bustling market areas where, despite the economic hardships, shopkeepers continued to open their stores every day. They did so not out of a desire for profit, but out of a sense of duty to maintain the illusion of normalcy in a world that had been turned upside down. He explained that while many could no longer afford the goods being sold, the shops remained open as a symbol of resilience. In these markets, the people's sense of community was palpable. Neighbors would share what little they had, offering food or assistance to those in need, all in the spirit of mutual care. This extended family system, as the speaker described it, was one of the few sources of strength in a time of widespread suffering. One story that I found particularly moving was that of a community leader who had taken it upon himself to ensure that no one in his neighborhood went hungry. This leader, a man with a warm smile and a determined heart, organized regular gatherings where people could come together to share meals and support one another. His actions were a testament to the enduring power of human compassion. Despite the economic difficulties and the political unrest, he believed that as long as people took care of each other, there was hope for a better tomorrow.
Nnamdi Kanu, let me tell you the truth. Federal government is not your problem. Your problem is your brothers. Now they hold you down. Not they look saying that federal government hold you. Your brothers that is following you. When can you say the moment they release you, now they hold you down? Because the truth is this. If these people stand saying they release you, within 24 hours, they will release you. Not be waiting different from waiting show already they talk. For waiting they talk. Wetin different from wetin some dey go talk for wetin you talk. So why your own call different? Why everybody dey say make dem release you? Na lie. Your people don want you to come out. These Igbo people standing with you, they no want you to come out. They are your number one enemy. So nothing say na federal government hold you. The people that hold you is your own brother. The Supreme Court don give order that you release this man. Now e still dey under the custody of DSS. Which people dey pressurize that DSS? If not for your brothers that is pressurizing them to say they should make sure they hold you. I'm telling you the truth. Go and work on your brothers. You Igbo people, you go and work on yourself. The wickedness is too much. This thing wey this man do, others tribe dey do am, dem dey waka free outside. See the case of Asari Tokubo. Helicopter dey roll the house, say one investor. The guy talk and say he go blow this helicopter down. Nnamdi Kanu never do that one o. But because he got his people in his back, his people dey his back. Now this man wan arrest. It has never been found with any ammunition. Nobody don bring and say they say with gun. But today na hold am down. The court say leave am. If him people no dey against am, e no go remain where e dey. But because say people dey against am, na make am tell where e dey so. The Igbo people is one holding this man. It's not the federal government, it's not anybody. They are the ones getting the DSS to hold him down. So we know these things. So you want to look for a release of people. More than remove her from federal government, more than remove her from Tinubu, more than remove her from court of appeal, more than remove her from all those courts, more than remove her from their head. You people is the one holding your brother. More than go release my brother. Make peace reign. Make everybody rest. Make all this or no government where they eat. All of them will stop. I bet you. The day this man will come out, give 24 hours, and the East will be silent. It will be peaceful as every other thing. So they know anything that they do there. Now make them run and down. So that was
stayed away on account of this Biafra thing. Can anybody begin to deny that there was no Biafra? It is unnecessary denial. There was a Biafra, and Biafra had a territory, and that territory is still there. Yes, it is Nigerian territory.
But Biafra ceased to exist.
Biafra ceased to exist after the war, but not in the mind of those who are agitating for it. They want it revived. We are not following that because a lot of us don't believe in that. We believe in restructuring of the polity based on equity, good governance, and justice. But the fact remains that if you say Nnamdi Kanu and his group carved their territory, they never carved their territory. You don't cover a territory by word of mouth.
In the studio with us to talk more about this, and of course the option of dialogue has been posited by many in the country. Good morning, first off.
Morning,
thank you for joining us on the show.
Good morning. Yeah. Good morning.
All right. Yes, many people are calling for dialogue, that the federal government should dialogue with IPOB. But then, is it now even constitutional, before we go into the legality of prescribing the group, is it even constitutional now for the government to say we want to dialogue with a banned group like IPOB?
I think it is laughable because government has put the horse before the cart. Simple. Government has done what it should first do. Is now thinking to do it later. Government has completely bungled this IPOB thing on three very basic grounds. One, in the first instance, it is not the duty of the military to handle internal protests, because that is what I see IPOB as, internal protests. It is not the duty of the military. That means the police have been relegated to the background, and that is the challenge and the thing we have been talking about for a very long time, that the police should be enabled to do their work. In the second instance, it is not even now granted that the military is already there. The narrative is extremely worrisome. Why would the military not adopt what I call psychology of communication? Why python dance? Python is a huge animal that lives in the forest. It gives the impression that the military have only gone there to swallow the people. You are in an amphitheater with a python. You end up being swallowed by the python. So, in the north, there is Operation Lafia Dole. What is Lafia Dole? That peace must reign. Why wouldn't they adopt similar code name in the southeast? Why don't you adopt Operation Udokama? Why don't you adopt Operation Njikoka? Why don't you adopt Operation Aniguofu? Meaning peace is supreme, unity is strength. We are one. These are all names you can use. Why use that name, Operation Python Dance? You have already destroyed the psyche of the people. The people, the same people you have gone there to protect, because you said, according to elementary, that they have gone there because of the security challenges in the southeast. So you have gone there to protect the people of the southeast, and you have massively destroyed their mentality. So why adopt that name? In the territory of northeast, where there is massive terrorism, you adopted a benign name like Lafia Dole. In the southeast, where there is no such challenge, you adopt such a wide name like Python Dance. The people are terrorized.
Okay.
Now, the third mistake that the military has made, and which is the most terrible one, is codenaming and calling IPOB a terrorist organization. By all intents and purposes, it cannot stand. And that is why every well-meaning Nigerian, every well-meaning observer of Nigeria, the whole international community is shouting and saying, this is wrong. This is wrong. Anybody who does not see it as being wrong is only trying to flow with the tide. Government has created a field and filled that field with landmines, and then expect players to go and play in that field. That cannot stand. So why branding IPOB a terrorist organization? And then in the words of the spokesman of the military, that they have stones
cocktails,
club sticks, and broken bottles. For goodness sake, can that be tools of terrorism? And then he said that they do stop and search, and then they extort people. For goodness sake, can that be terrorism? So I think what happens is that the then acting president, our own vice president, Professor Oshibajo, when he said that hate speech could be equated with terrorism, we rose up and said, "Oga, this is not right." And he had not stopped making that statement. It is on the basis of that the military has now latched on and said IPOB is a terrorist organization. So to brand somebody or a group terrorist is no longer heavy in the mouth of Nigerians.
Okay,
the leader of the country has so done. And I want to believe that, I think he said that in the heat of the moment, under the excruciating desperation of the massive hate speech that is going on, especially in social media. And I, for once, advise that the government should ignore most of those statements because many of them are not meant to be carried.
Egypt and some other friends of Nigeria will surely come out as a nation because we are fighting a just cause. Even a little child on the street will tell you this. We shall never go back to Nigeria again. God's grace will surely emerge as a nation. And so as far as this war continues, we'll fight to the last man.
The leader of the Biafran people is His Excellency Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Ojukwu.
Those hot days, the Quakers, the only thing we could do was to find a place where our fleeing compatriots could at least find an end to their flight. This is what Biafra is, the end of the journey for a persecuted, massacred, pursued people. We have made all attempts at a democratic resolution of this crisis. I have offered open elections, plebiscite. I have offered just an open carte blanche suggestion, anybody who can find a democratic way of finding out the wishes of the people, let him suggest it and we will go for it.
My name is...
Before the war, Guy Akobo was a lawyer. A refugee from Port Harcourt, he talks about his brothers.
As an ordinary Biafran, I have been affected by this war, just the same way as millions of others. This is one of the main squares in the town of Umuahia. It's right opposite the market. Now most of the stores are open, not because they do a lot of business, but because they just have to keep open to make believe as if life is still normal, as if they're still carrying on their normal day-to-day business. They don't sell much, and even at the prices which they sell, the ordinary man in the street can't afford to pay for these products, but still they have to keep open. That is those who are not employed in essential services. When people go to the markets and they find that prices are so high, really there ain't much they can do about it, because they know it's not the fault of the traders, but the people are really not bothered. It does not affect their morale. In fact, one thing which has helped Biafrans to bear and to sustain themselves is the extended family system. Every Biafran considers any other Biafran as his own brother or sister, and if he finds anyone hungry, he takes the person in and gives him some food. You see, we are interdependent and we treat ourselves as brothers, as one, because we are all undergoing the same suffering and the same hardship. Can't find any Biafran begging. People are really ashamed to go begging either for food or for money. They prefer to do an honest day's work for their daily bread, because we understand what we're fighting for, and we prefer to make any sacrifice, whatever, no matter how long it lasts, so as to get our fundamental rights. That is the right to exist as a people, the right to protect ourselves, the right to our home, to practice our religion, to live as we would like to live.
The head of the Biafran judiciary is their Chief Justice, Sir Louis Mbenefo.
As a judge, naturally, I believe in the rule of law, and the government of Biafra believes in that. Right from the start of the crisis, we have maintained law and order in Biafra. The courts have been functioning.
This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.